This story is important both on its merits, but also in terms of what it says about Trump 2.0 and the way he's approaching this administration. Put this Washington Post tear sheet up on the screen. I think they were the first one to break this news. Trump ousted at least 15 independent inspectors general in late night purge. So every cabinet level agency has one of these inspectors general. We're supposed to be independent. They're actually supposed to have lengthy terms, so it's not just serving under one president to try to insulate them from political influence. And actually during the first Trump administration, Trump had tried to fire a bunch of these individuals, and I think did fire some of them. And Congress reacted in a bipartisan manner, was like, we really need to protect the independence of these roles. So we are going to require that you give Congress 30-day notice and that you give us ample cause for why you're letting all of these people go. Mm-hmm. So Trump says, don't care that there's a law that says that I need to give you 30 days notice. I'm just going to do it anyway. They were notified late Friday by emails from the White House personnel director that due to changing priorities, they'd been terminated immediately. The only ones who were spared were the watchdogs at Homeland Security and Justice, which is kind of interesting, actually. And I'll get to that more in a moment. They go on to say the dismissals appear to violate federal law, which does require Congress to receive 30 days notice of any intent to fire Senate-confirmed inspector general. The legal uncertainty could create awkward encounters on Monday, that would be today, when several watchdogs who were told they were fired plan to show up in their offices to work anyway. So there's one person who sort of oversees the entire inspectors general program, and he put out a letter saying, listen, this wasn't legal, so we don't accept it. So a bunch of these watchdogs are going to show up today anyway because they view it, I think very clearly and accurately so, as being unlawful. One of the fire watchdogs described it as a widespread massacre. They said whoever Trump puts in now will be viewed as loyalists. That undermines the entire system. The other thing that's interesting, weird, whatever, here, Emily, is that a bunch of these people that he just fired were his own appointees from the first term. Mm-hmm. So it's not like this was a bunch of libs put in by Obama or Biden. Many of these people were actually Trump appointees, but one of the people who survived was an Obama appointee. That's Michael Horowitz at the Justice Department. And apparently he liked him because, he had been critical. He had been critical of Trump, but he'd also been critical of Biden. I mean, that's their role, is to try to be even-handed, regardless whether it's a Republican or Democrat who's serving. The other one that he left in place was one of his appointees at the Department of Homeland Security. That individual, Kafari, has been under investigation for years. But he had done something, and he's in charge of overseeing the crackdown on immigration. So it's important to Trump to have someone who's friendly there in particular. And he had also put out some report that Trump had appreciated. But some of these people that he fired had been really critical of different Biden actions. The Inspector General at the Veterans Affairs oversaw multiple investigations of how the Biden administration handled the agency's troubled effort to build a massive electronic health record system. Another one, Trump appointee at the Interior Department who was fired, had released a lengthy investigation concluding that when the U.S. Park Police led law enforcement officers into a crowd of mostly peaceful protesters, that he sort of backed up Trump's version of events there. You guys remember the whole Lafayette Square situation? His report said that it was about a pre-planned effort to build a fence around the park to protect officers, and not because Trump had sicked them on these peaceful protesters. So you would think that would be something Trump would like, but nevertheless, that person is fired as well.
Yeah, and Chuck Grassley responded to this and said there may be good reason the IGs were fired. We need to know that. If so, I'd like further explanation from President Trump. Regardless, the 30-day detailed notice of removal that the law demands was not provided to Congress. Jonathan Turley, by the way, agrees with that. Jonathan Turley, professor at GW Law, somebody who has agreed with a lot of Trump's decisions.
Yeah, he's like a regular Fox News kind of a guy.
I think he's a contributor. Yeah. He's willing to go out on a limb for some of Trump's decisions, but not this one. And I think it is because with these Senate-appointed positions, it is so clear. And what's interesting is that you can kind of pick up on scuttlebutt about policy priorities in the conservative world. These IGs, we have to have a plan. I don't know if this was in Project 2025. I don't remember it. Maybe it is and I'm forgetting. But I'd actually never heard that there was a plan to gut IGs. And it seems like Chuck Grassley hadn't heard that either, as somebody who would have a significant interest in it, because he says there may be good reason the IGs were fired. We need to know that if so. John Barrasso, the Senate Majority Whip, told Fox on Saturday, quote, sometimes inspectors general don't do the job that they're supposed to do. Some of them deserve to be fired. And I'm sure, by the way, that that's true. But I don't know what the evidence is. I haven't heard people talking about the evidence when it comes to these particular confirmed positions. And one of the interesting things also is from an anonymous source in the Washington Post story that actually makes a pretty good point, which is that IGs do what Trump says he wants to do, which is cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse.
That's right.
And even if some of these particular IGs weren't doing the best job of that, it now, by just gutting them right off the bat without going through the formal process, you are undermining, like whoever is confirmed in the future is going to look like a political actor in a way that they wouldn't have before. And they shouldn't look like political actors. Let's say an IG comes out with a great report on the EPA, and this is somebody who's appointed by Trump, confirmed by the Senate. Well, it's just going to be, they're going to lack the credibility that they otherwise would have.
Yeah.
Commenting on the waste, fraud, and abuse at the EPA. So this one could really come back to bite Trump.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I also think it's possible that, he's doing so many things so quickly that it's just hard to focus on any one, particular outrage. And so you're right, down the line, however things unfold, it's possible that it does come back to bite him. It's also possible that everyone just capitulates and forgets and moves on. And, I think that's kind of what he's betting on, and paying attention to which direction things go in is really important. Because again, put actually C2 up on the screen. This is some of the Republican reactions. You mentioned Chuck Grassley, probably the most noteworthy because he's a rock solid, conservative. No one call him, I don't think, a rhino, right? I'm correct about that. Yeah. He pointed out this was illegal. Senator Susan Collins expressed confusion. You're not confused. You know what's going on here. Lisa Murkowski loaded the lack of notice, expressed worry over the abrupt dismissal. Obviously, the Democrats came out very upset about this. We could put their reactions up on the screen. Next, Chuck Schumer characterized it as a chilling purge, a preview of the lawless approach. Jerry Connolly labeled the dismissals as a Friday night coup and an assault on transparency and accountability. Elizabeth Warren called it a purge, accused Trump of dismantling constraints on his authority. So obviously they're being very aggressive. But, like I said at the top, just on the merits, it's important because genuinely, some of these inspectors general have done important work on behalf of the American public and on behalf of taxpayers to understand whether it was Trump or whether it was Biden or whether it was Obama before that, where there had been failures, where there had been corruption, where there had been things that had been just done improperly or unlawfully, et cetera. Am I right that Horowitz is the one who did the Joe Biden report about the classified documents? Was that him? Or no, that was...
He did Comey.
Comey, that's right.
Yeah, and Trump has said that he's keeping Horowitz because he liked the Comey report.
He liked the Comey report. Yeah. But in any case, they have done genuinely useful work that reporters and taxpayers rely on. So it matters for the merits. But I think it is one more indication, and we already have many of these, that Trump 2.0 is taking a truly maximalist approach. Because there's not even a fig leaf here that this is legal. The 30-day period there's no exceptions for it. You have to give Congress 30-day notice, and he didn't. So it sets up a showdown. What happens next? Do Republicans just decide, well, he's our guy, and we're just not going to put up that much of a fight, and we don't really want to cross him, and we're just going to accept this? What happens when, you have to, the next, whoever's going to be next has to get confirmed if their predecessor was fired illegally? What does that look like? And so we're going to see how these sort of showdowns really unfold, and whether he is able to do things that are just clearly unlawful and get away with it. Because you have this, the birthright citizenship, the executive order ending birthright citizenship is kind of part and parcel of the same type of approach. A federal court has already smacked that down and said, this is preposterous. This was the most preposterous thing I've ever seen effectively. But he feels like he can effectively do whatever he wants, and the Supreme Court basically told him that that was true. So is he going to abide by this court order? Or is he just going to keep moving forward and doing what he wants to do and firing who he wants to fire and all of that?
This is one of the, I think, the most important storylines, not just of the first week, but I mean, this is going to be significant. SNL, of all places, had a really funny sketch, kind of poking fun at the Lin-Manuel Miranda millennial moment of Hamilton back in early Trump days. But Trump was like, yeah, maybe we need a king in the sketch. And Republicans. I came of age at a period of time when Republicans were just utterly horrified at the executive overreach of the Obama administration. And I think some of those complaints were entirely valid because there was a sort of stretching of the executive branch in a way that if you are a sort of ideological conservative, you would say, these are you're usurping powers that belong to Congress, and it's actually fueling this vicious cycle where Congress just becomes more and more weak because they're punting everything over to the executive branch. So they know that they can't get it done through, for example, the reconciliation process because it's not strictly related to the budget. And so, I mean, some of this is Trump rolling back powers that I don't think belong to the executive, but not all of it is at all. And actually, interestingly, I was looking this up while you were going through that. There was some talk about this in the Project 2025 circles, but not a lot. This was pretty low key. I think it was Public Citizen that picked up on something a couple of people that were involved in Project 2025 said about purging IGs. But genuinely, like, this is, if that was a serious point, it was really low key. And that shows how significantly Trump is literally taking the blueprints that were drafted over the course of the last 4 years. And a lot of people thought they'd be giving those blueprints to Ron DeSantis, for example. A strict Tea Party, Freedom Caucus, like true Chip Roy style, like limited government dude. Although what's happened at the state level is testing probably some of his old ideological allegiances. But all that is to say, Trump is like just taking the conservative movement's blueprints. And some of it I'm like, oh, like some of this is, from my perspective as a conservative, I'm supportive of it. But a lot of this is significantly testing the conservative movement's actual commitment to reining in the power of the executive branch. And this is a great example of that. So how many people are going to speak out and get mad about it in the same way that they would if Obama did it?
Oh, imagine if Biden did that.
Yeah.
Imagine if this was Kamala in office right now and she had done it.
I mean,
or had launched a shitcoin before. It's just like unimaginable.
Well, imagine if they had been, seriously, imagine if Kamala Harris had been inaugurated with the oligarchs.
Right. I know. I thought a lot.
It would have been a populist orgasm.
Right. If she was there with Zuckerberg and Bezos and Musk flanking her, then immediately doing a presser announcing basically we're going to support these people spending $500 billion, these tech oligarchs, to eliminate your jobs. I mean, that's the goal of these tech AI developers, is to literally eliminate all need for human labor.
And Biden might as well have been flanked by them in 2020 because that's the way his administration proceeded. But this is so brazen.
I actually don't think that's fair because the one place where Biden really broke from the Obama, Clinton neoliberal consensus and the area where he was most significantly different on economics was this approach to antitrust.
Trump a little bit too. The Google suit was started under Trump.
That is true. Yeah. He did dabble in it. I don't think we're going to see any of that this time around. But the thing with Biden is that there was a story to tell about oligarchy and inequality and breaking up these tech giants and why it matters to you, right? Why these aren't just theoretical highfalutin things happening in some court that really doesn't impact you, how it connects. But first of all, I don't think that he really cared that much about this. He cared about, NATO. That was where his brain was. I think these were people under him that were more invested in this direction, number one. Number two, he was 1 million years old and couldn't articulate anything about anything. So you end up with a situation where he pissed off all of the Mark Zuckerbergs and Elon Musks of the world, and genuinely they felt there could be some sort of constraint on my endless power and wealth. So they were pissed off. Wall Street was furious. I mean, how many Wall Street Journal op-eds were written about how terrible Lena Khan was, blah,
Probably
blah, blah.
over 100.
And literally.
Yeah, literally.
That's not exact. Literally, Matt Stoller kept track of them. So they're furious. They hate him. They know what he's doing. but the public has no idea and are never bought in and invested in this project. And so when it's, usurped and ended with a whimper, and by the way, Kamala Harris gave some indication she wasn't going to continue in that direction either. Mm-hmm. So, I want to, be fair and point that out. But yeah, so it made sense to them. We're going to line up behind this guy who's going to basically give us whatever we want. But yeah, if it was Kamala with those guys behind him, the freak out would be insane. And, and justifiably so, rightfully so. But Trump, because he just thinks he can get away with anything, and he might be right.
He can right now because and this is, in a weird way connects back to what we were talking about with AFD and the other bloc. It's that there have been years, and this isn't to say that Trump is blameless, but there have been years of such terrible policymaking that Trump was able to successfully exploit that and come in, and he now has the support of the public on a lot of different things. Not everybody, but there are a lot of different, he has significant support to shake up Washington. And so when you look like you're shaking up Washington, people can't pay attention to every tiny little thing that's going on.
That's right.
So it looks directionally right. And so, there's just not a lot of energy or appetite to push back on Trump after Democrats, and I think we have a list here of how Democrats, or we have a graphic here showing how Democrats reacted to the firing of the inspectors general. This is D3. Democrats are going to have to come up with a way to make this persuasive. Here you have Chuck Schumer saying this is a, quote, chilling purge and a preview of the lawless approach that he expects Trump to take. Jerry Connolly of Virginia said the dismissals were a, quote, Friday night coup and a, quote, assault on transparency and accountability. And Elizabeth Warren called it a, quote, purge and accused Trump of dismantling constraints on his authority. Now let's stick with the Connolly criticism there, where he says this is a, quote, assault on transparency and accountability. That covering up for Joe Biden for years, by the way, this is not both sidesism. It is saying that it makes it easier for Trump to get away with a, quote, assault on transparency and accountability when the people who are accusing him of assaulting transparency and accountability have zero credibility to do it. And that is one of the two major political parties in this country, and one of them just covered up for a president who was ailing in front of your eyes, told you that your eyes were lying to you, and is now wanting to be upset about transparency and accountability. So it actually is not good for the entire country that Democrats have so little credibility on that question, because it will make it a lot easier for Trump to then, quote, assault transparency by purging inspectors general.
Yeah.
Unlawfully, by the way. If he had gone and given them their notice and done it, that would be another thing, but he didn't.
Yeah, and the same thing is true with regards to oligarchy. If you want us, if you expect the country to take you seriously on these things, you can't be like Ken Martin, the guy who's likely to be the next DNC chair, being like, well, we'll take money from good billionaires. It's like, no, how about just, there are no good billionaires. How about just, it's bad when billionaires, when unelected billionaires run our parties and our government. How about that as a direction? And so, in my view, that's the choice they have in front of them. They can either effectively capitulate to Trumpism, which is the direction they're likely to go in and the direction they have been going in, supporting the Lake and Riley Act, et cetera. Or they could have a real whose side are you on moment and decide that they're going to excise this influence of big money within their own party so that they can offer an actual different vision and direction that has some credibility. But yeah, it's just, this is the storyline to watch, not just the moves that Trump makes that are already quite maximalist, but what's the response? Is there any check on him whatsoever? Or can he just do whatever he wants, even if it's brazenly unlawful?
And does it end up coming back on Republicans in the midterms? A lot of that will depend on how Democrats are able to claw back some measure of credibility, if they are able to. But Trump is definitely making that a little bit easier on those questions.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.